Welcome to People Deserve to Live. I'm Shrin.
And I'm Sam. Today we're discussing the Middle East at a crossroads: war, displacement, and the human cost.
Across the region, ordinary life is lived under a constant threat. In Tehran, families listen for air raid sirens. In southern Lebanon and parts of Israel, entire communities have been displaced. In Gaza, people search for shelter from bombs and the crushing summer heat. In Yemen, hunger persists. And in the Gulf, the sky is watched for drones and missiles. For millions, home is damaged or gone, and the future is uncertain.
It's crucial to understand that this is not one simple war. It's a group of interconnected conflicts. They involve the United States, Israel and Iran, Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon, Israel and Hamas in Gaza, and Yemen's Houthis targeting shipping routes. Iran-backed armed groups are active in Iraq, while Gulf countries find themselves hosting American forces or intercepting attacks. And behind the scenes, regional mediators like Oman, Qatar, Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are constantly working to de-escalate.
And a note on the numbers we'll be discussing. Casualty figures are provisional and often come from governments or health authorities directly involved in the conflict. We will attribute every number by saying according to, because these figures are often disputed and should not be presented as unquestionable facts.
Let's start with the direct confrontation between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. The current phase began on February 28, 2026, with a joint United States and Israeli attack on Iran. Since then, we've seen a pattern of attacks, followed by ceasefires and agreements that repeatedly break down.
What is the latest status of that confrontation?
It remains disputed. On August 3rd, President Trump announced that talks with Iran were occurring and that a major American attack was being postponed. However, Iran denied any direct negotiations, stating it was communicating only with Oman about maritime passage through the Strait of Hormuz. So the diplomatic picture is very unclear.
And what has been the human cost inside Iran?
According to Iranian authorities, 3,468 people were killed and more than 26,500 injured in the initial waves of attacks. They later reported an additional 50 deaths and over 500 injuries during renewed strikes in July. Independent verification of these figures remains extremely difficult.
Have there been casualties among American forces as well?
Yes, according to a Reuters report, 18 American military personnel had been killed by late July. The Associated Press has reported that 642 have been wounded across the conflict.
This brings us to Lebanon. How did the fighting expand so devastatingly there?
Hezbollah's entry into the conflict in support of Iran triggered a major Israeli offensive in Lebanon. The consequences for civilians have been catastrophic.
What do we know about the casualties?
According to Lebanon's health ministry, at least 3,783 people were killed and nearly 11,700 were injured between March 2nd and June 14th. The ministry noted that these recorded deaths included children, women, and healthcare workers, though the figures do not provide a full separation of civilians and combatants.
Beyond the casualties, what does daily life look like for people in affected areas?
The primary impact is displacement. Approximately 1.2 million people have been forced from their homes. More than 90,000 homes have been damaged. Even where fighting has subsided, families face immense difficulties returning to communities that are destroyed or remain militarized.
Is there any diplomatic arrangement in place to stabilize the situation?
There is a pilot zone proposal on the table. It involves the planned return of the Lebanese army to the south. However, Israel maintains a presence in some areas, and Hezbollah has stated its opposition to any form of disarmament. It is too early to say whether this agreement will hold.
Let's turn now to Gaza.
This conflict has a much longer timeline, but it's now caught up in these wider regional events.
That's right. Gaza's conflict predates the 2026 Iran war by years, but it's now subject to the same regional diplomatic and military pressures. According to Gaza's health ministry, approximately 73,375 Palestinians have been killed since October 2023. Around 1,250 of those are reported to have been killed since a ceasefire in October of 2025. It is important to note these figures do not consistently distinguish between civilians and combatants.
What is the latest from the ground?
Recent Israeli strikes killed approximately 17 to 18 people. Diplomatically, a proposal remains unresolved for Hamas to disarm in exchange for a full Israeli withdrawal and a transition to a civilian administration.
There were also reports of a strike on medical supplies. What happened there?
Medicine warehouses near the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital were destroyed. Palestinian officials said the strike destroyed essential medicines. Israel stated that it targeted a weapons storage location. These conflicting claims have not been independently resolved.
Beyond the direct violence, what is the broader humanitarian situation in Gaza?
It is incredibly grim. Most of the population is displaced, living in inadequate shelters during extreme summer heat. There is widespread food insecurity, very limited access to clean water, and a health system that has been severely weakened by years of conflict and the recent attacks.
The conflict is also being fought at sea, particularly around Yemen. What's happening in the Red Sea?
Yemen's Houthi movement has declared a blockade against Saudi shipping. This has created extreme danger for all vessels passing through the vital Bab el-Mandeb Strait. In response, some ships have rerouted entirely, while others have disabled their tracking systems to avoid being targeted. The Houthis have denied reports that they intend to collect passage fees from vessels.
While the world focuses on shipping lanes, the humanitarian crisis inside Yemen itself continues.
And it must not be forgotten. The UN estimates that more than 21 million Yemenis will require humanitarian assistance in 2026. Over 18 million face acute food insecurity, and 2.2 million young children are suffering from acute malnutrition.
Briefly, how have other countries in the Gulf been affected?
Countries like Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia have all been impacted, whether through direct missile or drone attacks, carrying out interceptions, hosting American military bases, sustaining damage to infrastructure, or dealing with the activities of Iran-backed armed groups. In many cases, the attribution for specific attacks remains uncertain.
Sam, we've discussed casualty figures, but the damage goes so much deeper than numbers of killed and wounded.
That's a critical point. We are seeing entire villages, apartment buildings, and family homes destroyed. Hospitals, ambulances, and medicine warehouses have been damaged. Essential infrastructure, electricity grids, water systems, ports, bridges, and energy facilities has been disrupted.
And this has a ripple effect on people's ability to survive.
Exactly. Families are losing their employment, their farms, their small businesses. The danger in maritime routes like the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb isn't just a strategic issue. It raises transportation and insurance costs, which means higher prices for food, fuel, and medicine for ordinary people far from the conflict zones.
And beyond the physical destruction, there is the psychological trauma, the constant fear, the loss, especially for children and displaced families, and the agony for those with missing family members, not knowing if they are alive or buried under rubble.
Amidst all of this, there are continuous, if quiet, diplomatic efforts. As we mentioned, countries like Oman, Qatar, Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are trying to mediate between the different parties.
It's important to approach news of these efforts with caution, isn't it? An announcement of a breakthrough can be very different from reality on the ground.
That's right. A ceasefire should not be described as peace until the attacks actually stop, until civilians can safely return to their homes, until humanitarian aid can move freely, and until the terms of any agreement are actually implemented.
So, as we consume information, we have to constantly ask, what has been independently reported? What is being claimed by a government or an armed group? What remains disputed, and what, for now, simply cannot be verified?
That clarity is essential.
When you step back from the details, you see governments and armed groups arguing about security, territory, nuclear programs, shipping routes, and military deterrence.
But underneath those arguments, it is civilians across Iran, Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and the Gulf who continue to carry the greatest burden.
And that returns us to the central principle of this podcast.
People deserve safety, dignity, medical care, food, shelter, and the chance to live, regardless of nationality, religion, or political identity. This fundamental human right is the first victim of any war. The stories we've heard today from across the Middle East are not just statistics. They are individual lives, hopes, and futures being torn apart by decisions made far from their homes. The cost is measured in homes destroyed, educations lost, and a generation growing up under the shadow of violence. It is our collective responsibility to remember the human faces behind the headlines and to advocate for solutions that prioritize their well-being above all else. The path to a lasting peace is built not on military victory, but on the recognition of shared humanity and the right of every person to live without fear.